And welcome into the Gabe Swartz Show here on KC Sports Tonight. It is a Monday. I'm Jared Koller, and I thought, Gabe Swartz, that we would be talking about a Chiefs Super Bowl victory today. And unfortunately, that's not the case. And we could just try to ignore it, but we're not going to do that. We're going to have a tough conversation. We're going to talk about what Kansas City's talking about today and what Kansas City's going to be talking about for a long off season, because for the first time in more than 1,100 days, we have a Chiefs playoff loss to discuss. It's not fun, but, Gabe, it's important. It needs to happen. So let's start with the headline of the day, which, in your opinion, is what?
That they can't win them all. That is the matter of fact.
I think that's fair.
And I think that it depends. I know that everybody in Kansas City, for the most part, is in some stage of the DABDA process of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. So I don't know where you're at in your stages, and I would say that this show, we might touch on different levels of that process. But I think that the acceptance stage for me personally is that they were more successful in a three-peat attempt than anyone has ever been.
Yep.
And I simply refuse to allow people to tell me it would have been better for them to have lost earlier.
No,
and
yeah.
That is one of the prevailing thoughts that's
really
circulating on social media for people who are not from Kansas City. I think from people who largely want to think that the GOAT debate between Mahomes and Brady is somehow tarnished by this.
Which we will not be really discussing in this
Yes.
program because that's
But
so
I just want to say it is always better to get there and lose than it is to not get a chance to. And
to be on that stage,
they
to
were
have that
so
opportunity,
close. Yeah, they were so
to
close
have that
to
experience, to put Kansas City on that stage, to have everyone a bad Super Bowl is better than no Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
Like, that's just a fact. So
it's mostly just unfortunate that two of the 5 times in the Mahomes era that they've been punked have come in Super Bowls, and that 2 of the 5 times in which you can say that one specific true thing that could be exploited was exploited, and that is the offensive line, which we can get to throughout this.
No, it's rare for the Chiefs to play in such a big game and drop the ball. I mean, we've been spoiled here in Kansas City. 9 straight playoff victories. Had they won this Super Bowl, it would have been 10 straight postseason wins, tied for the longest such streak in league history. So there's a degree of this. The Chiefs were not supposed to win. Like, the odds were stacked against them. History says they shouldn't win. The league is structured so they shouldn't win, and they didn't. So on one hand, it's like, yeah, this is what was supposed to happen. On the other hand, though, Gabe, where I stand is I'm not as positively thinking as a lot of people were last night, and some people are today. Like, I'm crushed because this is flat out a missed opportunity in a major way, an opportunity that they're not going to get again, I don't think. And that's not a slight to the
I'll pass that along to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, if they play for a three-peat again, wow. Which, sure, like
I do agree with that sentiment that it is a generational missed opportunity.
Right. And if any, like, maybe Patrick Mahomes will play for another three-peat, but at least this was Travis Kelce's last shot at a three-peat.
Yes.
And probably Chris Jones' last shot at a three-peat, maybe even Andy Reid's last shot at a three-peat.
And, like, genuinely, if they ever do get another chance at one, that means that Kansas City has hit the lottery and found other versions, whether it's a tight end and a defensive lineman, of generational franchise legends like Kelce. And which I've had that thought of, like, the second era of the Patriots dynasty. Like, this was the point of Brady's career in which he started getting Gronk. And so you're almost wondering, like, is Mahomes going to have an extended period of time with Xavier Worthy? Is he going to have an extended period of time with Rashee Rice? Is that going to be the kind of connection?
There's still ways for the team to have success, but it's not just have success, but have the ultimate success in back-to-back years. Like, that's what it's going to
Yep.
take, well, really in 3 years,
Yeah.
to get back to this stage in this moment. And so that's why when you get this far and you get this close, to come up short is heartbreaking in any way. Whether it was, I think you make an argument, was it better to get blown out
No.
in the Super Bowl
I
or
would've
better
much-
to lose by 2 points? Like, that, I like that argument better than, was it better to make or miss the Super Bowl altogether?
I mean, I can only compare it to other fandom that I've had in this football season, and I would just say that I much more enjoyed losing a close Peach Bowl
Yes.
than getting
I agree.
absolutely ripped apart.
I
in the Super
100%
Bowl.
agree.
So
And so I like that is I understand the way they loss came up short, but it's just a missed opportunity at something that could have gone a long way in the legacies of everyone involved, and instead, it goes the other direction where it's another bad Super Bowl. Gabe, I think this was a worse performance than the Bucs
Absolutely.
Super Bowl, even though the point spread was closer by the final score. But when it was 34-0,
well, it was like the fakest 22 points
right.
ever.
I mean,
so.
but that's when people look at final scores 10 years from now, I don't know how they'll look at it, but I think the Bucs game was more competitive, and that segues into what went wrong. Because I think the comparison for a lot of people is the Bucs game. But for me, I thought that Tampa Bay loss in the Super Bowl was an offensive line that was unable to do legitimately anything. And Patrick Mahomes did everything he could to the best of his ability and did not have help from wide receivers or skill position players either. They were dropping balls, and it was 15 on his own and no help. And the dam broke on the offensive side. For this game, the offensive line is where the problems started across the board. Not just left tackle, not just left guard, center, right guard, right tackle as well, with credit to the Eagles' defensive line, of course. But the difference, Gabe, is that I did not think Patrick Mahomes handled the pressure well, and I don't think Patrick Mahomes played well even before the pressure arrived. I thought this was a pretty bad performance by number 15, which is understandable given the context of he doesn't trust his offensive line, and he was under pressure more than any quarterback would like to be under pressure.
Yeah.
But he still did not perform anywhere near the level that I expected him to, and that's a really tough pill to swallow, to say that the Chiefs season is over in large part because Patrick Mahomes did not play well.
Yeah, I think that it is the worst viewpoint of it. It is the worst game of his career, contextually, and if you're going to make some excuses for him, it's like the second or third worst, because I think that the 3 touchdowns at the end don't matter at all in the context of what actually mattered.
Which were awesome, great throws to Xavier Worthy,
insane throws that you wouldn't. Other people don't make.
But that was not.
But it doesn't matter.
That wasn't happening when the game mattered.
Yeah.
So that's where I don't put that into the evaluation.
And so I would say that it was the perfect combination if you're an Eagles fan of Philadelphia didn't have to do anything that the credit to Vic Fangio, it should be given to him for the extent of the season and for just realizing last night we don't need to do anything crazy. We're just beating them with 4-man pressures, and we don't have to blitz. We don't have to do anything dumb to stress the back end of the coverage because their coverage was holding up and
I give Fangio credit for that
pressures were getting there.
I'm sure there's part of other coaches that maybe try to overthink it, and he just said, no, our guys are going to beat you.
But that was the thing, is it was
but
both
yes,
sides.
Credit goes to the Eagles have highly paid players and have highly talented people too. We look at things through a Chiefs lens.
Yes, they were very good.
But credit where it's due.
Yeah, and they were the number 1 defense in the league for a reason. They completely took advantage of things. I think that the Chiefs compounded the errors. It was a combination of the Eagles played incredibly well, and the Chiefs played as poor as possible.
Yeah.
Which made it look as bad as possible, because I do think that like the very first play of the game with Juju was a positive, and
Yes.
and that there were
17 plays. The 17 plays after that, they gained a total of 3 yards.
Yeah. Which is unfathomable, because they never have, like when Brian Cook got the interception down 7-0, I was like, okay, this is where they settle in,
And then they
put together a
out.
point drive, and whether it's a field goal or not, like Harrison Butker didn't touch the field last night aside from to kick off post those fourth quarter touchdowns and the late third quarter touchdowns that don't matter. So, yeah, I mean, you have to give credit, because the Eagles' defensive line was incredible. I think that the first interception, the pick six, was a really, really great play by Cooper DeJean. I think that Mahomes lost track of him, but he made a great play to
Yes, but I don't know why he's throwing that ball. I mean, I know why, because he was pressing. But
yeah, it was 3rd and 16, and DeJean made a great play. He made an incredible return and showed the punt returning skills that he has from Iowa, and that he's played with. He had several decent punt returns last night as well.
Yeah. Also, Matt Araiza does not know how to pin anyone.
It's just he just bombs the ball. And
that's why they lost the Super Bowl.
The second interception was Joe Tooney knocked into Mahomes, and so I don't really put that one on Mahomes that much, because Hollywood Brown was open.
And I don't think it was just a little bit off, though. Like, that throw was...
No, but it was short. It was short because his base got taken out from him. I will give him the benefit of the doubt on that one.
His upper body was totally fine, and so for the throw to be that off just because got run into his lower half, like there's a reason. But also, we're talking about Patrick Mahomes,
but he's
who's
not
been
expecting
impervious
it.
to.
He's not expecting to just get knocked in the butt as he's throwing.
And that's where I go. It's a collective effort, to where the blame starts with the offensive line, but Mahomes still made the bad throw.
Yeah,
and made the bad decision on 3rd and 16.
And Kelsey had a drop on the second.
That didn't really look like a drop to me. We didn't see a good replay, so that which they didn't show. But there was the slant where they were disconnected on, that was on the turf. But yeah, I mean, Kelsey didn't get going. But the drop of the game, Gabe, was DeAndre Hopkins at the end of that. So okay, let's talk about some moments, because the stages for me, I was almost wanting them to get down 10-0, because I'm like, okay, just for aesthetically, the Chiefs got to get down 10-0 to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing, is it was 10-0, and I wasn't worried.
I wasn't either.
The pick six happened. I was like, okay, and it went from not worried to it's over.
Yeah, so that's where I thought the Brian Cook interception was like, okay, that's going to wake them up, and then they went 3-and-out. But then the Chiefs' defense held them there. It was 10-0.
The Chiefs' defense was fine.
I thought the Chiefs' defense played as well as you could have hoped. They stopped Saquon Barkley all game. When it went at 10-0, I thought the Chiefs were winning. At 17-0 is when I began to worry, and is when I thought, okay, Mahomes doesn't have it. And then I thought it was over at 24-0, or thought it was over when Zach Bond had the interception, because essentially that made it 24-0.
Yeah.
So, and those happened very quickly. But then where I thought that it was like at 24-0, I didn't know that it'd be an embarrassing loss. When Hopkins, who didn't have a soul within 25 yards of him, dropped that ball, and the throw wasn't even perfect either, which there's no reason that throw shouldn't be perfect when there's literally no one around him. I thought this is the nightmare scenario for the Chiefs. How'd you process those?
Yeah, I mean,
trajectory?
yeah, I think that it was at 10-0. I was not worried, or I wasn't worried in the way that a football fan should be worried when it's 10-0 against their team in a big game. At 17-0, I was like, yeah, it's they're not moving the ball.
It was still early on. I thought there was potential, but they need. What I was worried about is like, okay, Mahomes is not. Like, in order to come back, they weren't
moving the ball at all. At least in the Tampa Bay game, I can remember sitting there at halftime being like, man, the Chiefs are moving the ball.
Yes.
They are. It's taking a lot of work to move the ball, but like the defense was giving up points because they kept getting to third down and then committing a penalty.
Yeah,
And,
right.
And that happened a little bit last night as well.
Early on. My
early
only
on,
criticism of the defense was, well, the McDuffie penalty shouldn't have been one, but that was costly. The Omenihu offsides, that was costly. The Bolton unnecessary roughness, that was costly. But the defense, because the 17 points, well, the 7 was from DeJean, and then the ball like those 2 touchdowns don't go against the defense at all. They finally broke in the second half in the long touchdown of Devontae Smith, but the Chiefs
and that
defense
ball was the result of a immediate change of possession at midfield, and they were just like, let's go deep. Which, credit to Kellen Moore dialing up a shot play on a change of possession at midfield.
Yeah,
but
I mean, it was well executed, and so that's where I think the Chiefs defense held as long as they could have. But credit the Eagles off. I mean, that's where it's like Jalen Hurts, I don't think was given the respect that he deserved entering this week from a Chiefs perspective. But I thought he played well. The offensive line pass blocked better than a lot of people thought they could. The wide receivers played well. Nick Sirianni as well. So credit the Eagles. But Gabe, go ahead.
My last thought on the offensive line situation was I respect, admire, and appreciate everything that Joe Thuney did at left tackle and the effort and the ask of what the coaches asked him to do.
Right.
He filled in admirably. What I will say is my entire argument late in the regular season for why they should have left him at left guard was for a situation like this. When you're playing against a great defensive line, in my opinion, you'd much rather have one problem than 2. And Joe Thuney at left tackle was a problem because he wasn't a left tackle. Mike Caliendo, and that's why the crux of my entire DJ Humphries argument was that you were arguing DJ Humphries at left tackle versus Mike Caliendo at left guard. You were not arguing DJ Humphries versus Joe Thuney, because it was and we saw how quickly the Chiefs had to, or felt like, because I think that you could make the argument they still could have ran the ball a little bit more in the first half.
I mean, but when they did try, they got nothing, so I'm fine with the amount they did it.
I can make the argument the Chiefs, statistically, from the moment that they moved Thuney to left tackle and had Caliendo at left guard, became a significantly worse team running the football. And in terms of rushing success rate, and it already was not an explosive run game, but they weren't explosive anymore.
But that also coincided with the offense playing great.
But to win a Super Bowl, you need to be two-dimensional.
I don't know.
And I think that Thuney at left guard would have given them a chance to run the ball a little bit better, and I think that they would have had a better chance being able to mask one issue, and that's Humphries at left tackle. But
that's your argument.
Saying all of that, the in fairness to the coaching staff and in fairness to Andy Reid, is that we know that they rotated Humphries in with the ones, and if their evaluation was that he was not capable,
that was going to be my counter.
Then if that is the evaluation, then truly this Chiefs team hit its ceiling, because they whiffed on Kingsley at left tackle. Wanya Morris was a whiff at left tackle. Joe Thuney was
DJ
Humphries was their try, and he hurt his hamstring, and so that became a whiff. And so if the argument from Andy Reid, and if he told people, if he was just given some truth serum and he said, honestly, Humphries would have been worse than Thuney left tackle, if that's the case, then the Chiefs never had a chance yesterday, and they hit their ceiling for the year. In this specific matchup, the only chance they would have won the Super Bowl is if they had not seen Philadelphia in the title game.
Their hope was that Patrick Mahomes would play like he did in the Bucs Super Bowl and just not be fazed by the pass rush and just be a superhero. And the odds of that were very slim.
Yeah.
But they probably still lose. But, maybe that makes it a little closer, and the Eagles, who knows. I think with the exception of saying, they needed to run the ball better, that I disagree with.
I just think that they would have been able to run the ball better if they had those three in the middle.
Sure. But I think you're right in that it didn't work at the final game with the way the offensive line was constructed, left to right. And I think it's just a tough thing for me to criticize, given that we don't know what little we saw of Humphries was not great, and we just almost have to give the benefit of the doubt to the coaching staff. But what they put out there didn't work.
Yeah.
So
And they didn't. That's the thing is they didn't try.
But
they didn't try.
If this was a bad coaching staff, I'd be more critical. But it's like if they thought it was even close, I think they would have tried it. Like they replaced Wanya Morrison, Kingsley Sumatia in game, in the regular season.
But they're younger guys.
Mike Caliendo's a young guy too, though.
And Mike Caliendo was getting beat.
Right.
Bad.
And if I at halftime, I thought for sure they were going to make a change in the third quarter. They didn't. And so that's where it tells me that it wasn't there. But it was a flaw in the construction of the team.
Mm-hmm.
However, they did get to the Super Bowl, and so that's where if you want to make an argument that, had Humphreys get worked in the Bills game maybe, I don't know. But it starts with the offensive line. They needed Mahomes to be a superhero. He wasn't. They needed Andy Reid to have some plays that were foolproof, and those plays didn't happen. And as a whole, Gabe, it's a loss. Does this change how you look at the season at all? For me, no. I say it's just like the 2020 season where it was a great run of the Super Bowl, just fell apart at the end.
Yeah, I think that's the same. That's my same opinion. I think that it's an not overwhelming success, but it is a success of a year. In that, I think so. That they, whether you believe it's luck, the way that they won several of their regular season games, I think that they probably should have gone 14-3 or 13-4 instead of 15-2.
But who cares?
But
they still would have got to where they got.
I think that the team last year that went 11-6 probably should have gone 13-4. And so these two teams were similar, and they both had flaws, and they were.
And the
able
regular
to
season doesn't matter
last year. So that's the way that I look at it. I think that the interesting thing heading into the offseason as we look ahead to the future is just that after the Tampa Bay Super Bowl, you knew because of Mitchell Schwartz injury, because of Eric Fisher's Achilles,
it was very clear.
It had to switch so many things. Creed Humphrey is still an All-Pro. Joe Thuney, if you play him at left guard, is still an All-Pro.
Yeah.
And Trey Smith is really good.
He's a free agent,
The debate of whether to sign him or not is an interesting one, but he's not somebody who you're getting rid of because he stinks.
Right.
Juwan Taylor, you're not getting rid of because
there's no one you're getting rid of
because he
stink.
Is not. You can't. It doesn't financially make any sense to move on from him. The offseason, the offensive line being bullied in the Super Bowl, it's all about fixing left tackle.
Yes.
That's the one thing. It's not a complete retool. It is fixing left tackle.
Yeah. Yeah, and that comes with a lot of decisions, and that's where we hope it wasn't Trey Smith's last game. Hope it wasn't Nick Bolton's last game, Justin Reed's last game, Justin Watson.
It's somebody. It's one of them.
Yes, all those guys aren't coming back. But
if not multiple.
From just a standpoint of I like all those players. Like I wish it wasn't.
But they had a great run.
This isn't the first time the Chiefs have had some tough last games. Gabe, I wish the Patriots' loss wasn't Eric Berry's last game. I wish that loss wasn't Derek Johnson's last game. I wish that the Bengals' loss wasn't Tyrann Mathieu's last game.
Or Tyreek's.
Yeah, right. I mean, you go through the list. It was somebody's last game. And that's what's cruel about sports. And this will be another topic another time, but I hope it wasn't Travis Kelce's last game. So unfortunately, that's another reason why it was just such a missed opportunity. But there are a couple silver linings from this game. Gabe, I don't know what the heck they are, but you said, hey, Jared, put silver linings on the board.
I think that there are two things that in my acceptance stage of today, I was like, you know what? These are the two things that I'm going to hang my hat on from last night. One, I listened to as much post-game sound as possible from Patrick Mahomes, and I listened to it while watching the video, and I could see in his eyes, it looked like a guy who is he's a sicko, a competitive sicko.
Oh, yeah, no.
This is going to fuel whatever his next run is. And I think that's the same as the last playoff loss 1,100 plus days ago.
Yeah.
And I think that
great
it's
tweet,
similar to the Super Bowl. Yeah, great job. And I think it's similar to the Super Bowl against the Bucs. So I think that if there was I don't think that there's anything of complacency setting in from a great 7-year run.
No.
And whether they can retool around him is to be determined. I think that next year, like
Yes.
a step back
That-
of
the
an
narr-
AFC
part of the-
championship loss is probably expected. But
part of the narrative and legacy of this game will be written by what happens next. Like if they don't get back to the Super Bowl for another 4 years, then yeah, this was that. But like I don't think that's gonna happen.
yeah, but we'll see. And my second silver lining, I know that it was the fakest 8-catch, 157-yard,
that's-
2-touchdown performance of all
That's
time.
what I thought you'd say. Yeah.
But Xavier Worthy was open a lot. He was open a lot, even early, and as the protection was breaking down, he was streaking open several times.
Yeah.
And that was, you can
He's a
see that
dude,
on all
man.
22. He developed. He was much better later in the season. He had, you could almost argue, an even better end of season than Rashee Rice did last year. And I think that the combo of those guys, I think they'll bring Hollywood Brown back. I just don't think that Hollywood Brown did enough this year to warrant a much bigger deal in free agency, so I think they can reasonably bring him back next year. I think that
either way,
the wide
the
receivers
Worthy
are a positive
and
looking forward.
regardless of who's the three, Worthy Rice
Those are both hits.
is
Yeah.
a better is the best wide receiver tandem the Chiefs have had since Hill Watkins.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was about to say maybe better than Hill Watkins. I wouldn't go that far.
No.
But
Not
but
yet.
they have a great chemistry. I think they have unique skill sets, and no, I think that's Did it matter what Xavier Worthy did last night? No, but is it something where you can the next time Chiefs are in a Super Bowl say, hey, that's going to be a thing, and that's where we don't know about a Rashee Rice suspension possibly, but Xavier Worthy is the definite number one wide receiver entering next year.
Keep chucking it deep.
Yeah, I mean, that's
him
easier
chances.
said than done. Like, that's where I just can't read too much into that because the game was over, where the Eagles' defensive backs really is locked in, where the defensive lineman really is locked. And at that point, the Chiefs knew they had nothing to lose as well, whereas when it mattered, it wasn't there. So I really don't put much stock into that. Like, some people are saying, where was this all year? It's like, it's not that simple and easy. Like, that was some of the, even though it was in the Super Bowl, it was lower leverage than the Chiefs have
Where was that
had.
all year?
But, like, yes, that would have been nice to have all year, but that was lower leverage than every game. Like,
yes, it was lower leverage than any other spot in the season, except for the Denver game.
Where DJ Humphries proved that he couldn't be a left tackle in 2025. That's not it. No, I think it's a tough conversation. What I will sum up and say is, as people have their own arguments, as we disagree a little bit on, and Neil Jones and I really disagree. Shock I know about
Shocking.
Offensive line. He still wishes the Chiefs signed Orlando Brown, which I think is ludicrous. But my take is it starts at the offensive line. Mahomes played bad, but in a game, just I'll end with Travis Kelce's quote. When you get beat that bad, that soundly, and you are consistently that terrible production-wise from a play-to-play basis like they were in the first half, pretty much everything has to go wrong. I don't think it's I think in sports a lot of times we like to blame one thing, like one person, one aspect, one decision. I really don't think that's the case in this case. I think it's starting with credit to the Eagles for having great players, having a great scheme, and having great execution. They didn't come out. They weren't pressing, whereas I thought the Chiefs looked like maybe they were pressing early. And then the Chiefs' offensive line was bad from left tackle. Trey Smith did not play well either.
He did not.
The entire offensive line was bad. Mahomes was bad. The scheme was bad. They couldn't run the ball. Receivers weren't getting open. They weren't. It's just everything went wrong.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's easier to swallow rather than just, hey, one thing went wrong, but that's what happened, guys. So everything after that is semantics, and it's worth arguing, but at the end of the day, it's a tough Monday. We had a lot of victory Mondays, Gabe. I'm sorry this one.
I can't believe Jalen Hurts was the MVP, by the way.
Who'd you want it to
Josh
go to?
Sweat. He dominated the whole game.
Yeah. It's just so hard for a defensive guy to get one who doesn't have a
Or DeJean.
great.
He ended the game.
Yeah.
That's
It's
what
just,
happened.
I think it's
That was-
essentially impossible for a quarterback not to get it.
If I
Tom
was
Brady-
Russell Wilson, I would have a
Tom
if
Brady
I
got
was-
the MVP of the 13-3 win, right?
No, Julian Edelman did.
Oh, that's right. Okay, good.
But if I'm Russell Wilson,
But
I'm
that's
like,
what it
what happened?
takes.
What happened in my Super Bowl? We won 43-8. I played solid, and there was a pick six.
Yeah.
And they gave the MVP to the guy who had the pick six. Like,
Did you have Sweat for your
no,
MVP?
I didn't.
Gabe, what bet did you have that had you losing your mind at the end of the game that I had to come out of the sports office
I
for?
had Xavier Worthy last touchdown, so that was.
Literally, I watch it in seclusion because I don't want to hear dumb comments when I watch a Chiefs
Thanks. Yeah,
playoff game.
that's me.
And all I hear is someone screaming with 2 minutes left in the game, and
I was just glad to make back a little bit of my Chiefs money line investment.
I did not. So I went all in on one specific bet that did not happen. But you know what? Royals baseball season is around the corner, baby. Let's go.
September will be here again at some point.
There it is. All right. That's Gabe Swartz. I'm Jared Clark. Thanks for rocking us here on this Monday. James Shields salutes you. Have a great evening, everyone.